Deadly Serious by A.J. Thibault. Chapter 1. The pond was white. Around the edge, clear wafers of ice had begun to form. The dark silhouettes of evergreens stood out against a cold and graying sky. Except for the far-off call of a flock of summer-bound geese, there was no sound at Winter Cove. The snow continued to fall. The temperature dropped. The bearded stranger waited. This is no place for an old man, he thought. What am I doing here? Maybe this lunatic won't show up. His fingers and toes ached from the cold. He'd been waiting here for 3 hours. Suvorov knew this would be his last time. After this, he would retire, maybe some warm island in the South Pacific where no one would remember his name. A quiet place where he might lose himself among the natives, grow old, undisturbed, feign senility, and die. This he longed for. A white blanket of snow rested softly over the tops of the tall pines, and the upper branches sported a coat of fine powder. Everywhere he looked, it was as if he was inside a magical kingdom. A few snowflakes settled on his open palm, revealing unique, diamond-like patterns before they melted. Suvorov remembered how in his youth he and his brother used to lie on their backs in the snow and spread their arms and legs to make angels. Whatever happened to that kind of innocence, he wondered. His training did not allow for idle thought. Still, it was difficult not to let his mind wander. After 10 long years of searching, he had found his brother, Alexander, and his brother was dead. Glancing at his watch, Suvorov realized that it was 4 in the afternoon. Gudis should be here by now. Below the tree ridge where he was hiding, and yet in clear view, lay the pond. Snowdrifts traversed a pathway that wandered toward 4 tennis courts seen now as distant, fenced-in white squares. To the east were a little rock garden and a wooden bridge that looked like toothpicks dusted with flour. High on the hill beyond the bridge stood a large, stately home. A crackling alerted Suvorov to the accumulating weight of the snow on the branches above his head. Looking around, he saw the forest trees drooping to the ground, overburdened with the weight of this November gift. The storms had come early this year. No one had expected it. No one had asked for it. This was nature's way of defying man, he thought, as his dull green eyes continued to roam the landscape. He sucked in his breath and shifted his weight to the other foot when his eyes instinctively focused on a flicker of movement. Coughing wretchedly, a thin visitor in an oversized greatcoat dragged himself through the storm. Gudis. Suvorov forgot about the cold. He forgot about the angels. He forgot about the storm. He reached for his gun, a Mauser C-96. Not a fancy weapon, but a trusting one that had served him well in the past. Johnny Gudis had just turned 40 as he kicked his way through a 2-foot-high snowdrift. On the half-frozen pond directly in front of him, a sleek black swan arched its slender neck. The ice around the edges of the pond was slowly closing in on the bird as heavy snow sprinkled down around it. It swam in small, concentric circles. "What are you doing here?" John shouted drunkenly. "Jesus, I hate this crap!" John glared at the tree line, his dark eyes unfocused from the binge. "I know you're here, Lauren," he shouted out loud. "I know you're responsible for this." The sleek bird ruffled its dark feathers and raised itself up. A frozen tear was trapped in John's eye. Muffling a sneeze, he dug deep inside his coat pockets. Muttering to himself during a long and winded search, he finally withdrew a pair of blue earmuffs. These he clamped over his head. His left hand returned to the pockets for a bottle of Stolichnaya. John wet his thin blue lips and drained the bottle. With a remarkable burst of energy, he tossed the vodka bottle across the broken ice. "Go on! Get the hell out of here, bird! Don't you know it's winter?" he shouted. "Don't you know birds fly south?" The graceful cygnet barely glanced at him. Deep in the shadows, Suvorov began loading the clip for his weapon, just as he had 1,000 times before. Slowly, methodically, expertly. The kill would be easy. But who should go first, he wondered. The bird or the man? Suvorov's mind delighted in this kind of game. That's why he had been chosen. He was an expert sharpshooter with a flawless record and a simple assignment. Ask no questions, terminate one political troublemaker, and within a few hours he would be winging his way to Bali, tasting fresh veal and sipping Pernod. He would have done it for nothing. After all, His sources informed him this was the man who had killed Alexander Vasanov, the great physicist. Firming his stance, he aimed the gun and pulled the trigger. The first shot was designed to pierce the ice 6 inches from John's left foot. "Better get out of here, Bird," John wheezed at the Swan. "Go on, take off," he ordered. He threw a handful of snow, hitting the Swan in its side. In a sudden flurry of speed, the Blackbird swept across the ice and lit into the air. As soon as it attained airspeed, 2 well-placed bullets tore the creature's body apart. A trail of red steamed across the virgin white landscape. John watched in horror. For the first time ever, warm blood spilled over the Gudis estate. John felt each shot in the cells of his mind. Panic rose in the woods of his youth. The golf course was deserted, the tennis courts haunted. He stared at the large stone house on the hill. The smell of death was everywhere. His father's home was no longer safe, and for the last time in his troubled life, John Gudis began to run. Through the snowdrift, along the sandbar, toward the bridge. Tracking his prey, Suvorov stepped into the open, but heard a thud in the distance. It could have been the wind or a broken branch snapping, but he knew it was a car door. Firm, solid, rich. Probably European. He leveled his gun at the retreating figure and fired the kill shot. John's entire body jerked to the left, indicating a solid neck rupture, then another in the chest. Suvorov fired again, but the bullet missed its mark as the gun was knocked from his hand. "You goddamn son of a commie whore bitch," a gravelly voice hissed in his ear. 2 burly hands wrapped a garrote around Suvorov's throat. The wire cut deep into the Russian's windpipe. He tried to jerk free. He thought of his island, the fishing, the payoff, but the grip on his neck was like iron. The snow and the cold bit into his open wound, and the last thing he remembered hearing from his executioner was a lousy American nursery rhyme. "Georgie, porgy, puddin' and pie." George Arkin pulled tighter on the wire, kissed the girls, and made them cry. It was clear from his grasp that he wanted the steel to slice apart the sniper's carotid artery. When the boys came out to play, Arkin yanked harder on the wire as a well-placed knee to the kidney deflated the Russian. Georgie Porgy ran away. Arkin knew the marksman was dead when his head rolled north. Releasing the bloody garrote, he let the body crumple to the ground. "John?" A woman's voice broke the silence. She started to run, closer. Arkin could tell. "John, are you there?" she called. Dragging the corpse behind a spruce tree, Arkin shook snow from a branch and began covering the dead man. It would be spring before anyone found the body, unless the wolves got him first. Lauren cried out again, "John, where are you?" Then she noticed the mess of entrails where the Swan, or what remained of it, lay. Sinew, guts, feather, and shattered bone formed a trail of blood through the snow. Lauren screamed. The bird's neck and parts of its head lay several feet away by the water's edge. Gagging, she raced towards the pond, trying to keep from throwing up. Nearing the embankment, she tripped on a gnarled root. She caught her balance, looked up, and spotted John's blue earmuffs. She picked them up. She followed his fresh tracks past the drift, beyond the sandbar, across the bridge, and toward the house. Arkin wiped the wire on his sleeve and stuffed it back inside his coat. As he pulled up his collar, he took one last look at the property and disappeared silently into the dense forest. He reached the road in a matter of seconds. Though the trees and the snow and the storm always had a tendency to muffle human terror, George heard the scream. It was chilling. It was unending. It was always the same. He never looked forward to winter.